All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into the Mahabharata,
Yes.
one of the most well-known stories in the Mahabharata, and really a story that resonates across cultures and across time, and that is the story of Karna. Um, what makes Karna so interesting is, I mean, there's so many aspects of his story, but you have this element of fate, right, of being born with this like preordained destiny. You also have the themes of loyalty and betrayal, sacrifice, and really just the sort of persistent shadow of injustice.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's so compelling about Karna is that he is one of the, arguably the greatest warrior of his age.
Right.
Um, and yet his path is constantly challenged by circumstances beyond his control. And I think there's something people can relate to even today.
Hmm.
We make our best plans, but sometimes things happen and, we have to make adjustments. And so you see in Karna's life a constant struggle against, destiny or fate and really a battle against ingrained societal prejudices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things we're going to see is like this idea of dharma, this idea of duty, and how it sort of plays out in his life, and
Yeah.
also this idea of karma, the things that he does, the choices that he makes, how that then reverberates throughout his life. So why don't we start at the beginning? So the birth story of Karna is pretty incredible.
Right.
His mother, Krinti, she possessed a very special ability. She was granted a mantra by a sage named Durvasa. And this mantra was very powerful. This mantra allowed her to invoke any deity and bear a child.
That's right. It was, kind of a gift and a curse, perhaps,
Yeah.
because, she was a young unmarried princess.
Hmm.
And the story goes that, she, just out of curiosity, decided to test out this mantra.
Yeah.
And and so she invoked Surya, the sun god.
Yeah, and lo and behold, Karna appears. And not just, sort of born in the usual way, but born with this sort of inherent protection.
Right.
The kavash, a natural armor,
Hmm.
and these kundal, which are earrings that are intrinsically linked to his life force. So from the beginning, he's set apart.
Exactly. He's born with these divine gifts. And, the Kavak is said to be impenetrable.
Yeah.
So, he is really, from his very first breath, he is possessed of capabilities far beyond that of ordinary mortals.
Yeah, and so here we have this sort of this divine birth, but immediately fate, or maybe societal pressure. I don't know what. How would you characterize it? There's a huge obstacle in his path.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you have this child who's born under such auspicious circumstances, but
Yeah.
on the other hand, you have this incredibly difficult situation for his mother.
Right.
She's an unmarried princess.
Yeah.
In that area, that was a huge social stigma
Of course.
to have a child out of wedlock. And so you can imagine, she's faced with this predicament,
Yeah.
and the fear of social disgrace, I think, was just overwhelming for her.
Hmm.
And so in that moment, it seems like her concern for her reputation eclipsed her maternal instincts, and she makes the very difficult decision to abandon her newborn child. And she places him in a basket, sets him adrift on a river,
Hmm.
hoping against hope that he would be found and cared for.
Yeah, and thankfully he is. So Karna is discovered, and he's adopted by a charioteer named Athilatha and his wife Radha,
Right.
and they raised him as their own. And one can assume that they provided him with love and care, but this act of abandonment and his upbringing as a Sutaputra, the son of a charioteer, this becomes a defining aspect of his life,
Yeah, it really does.
doesn't it?
And it becomes this kind of label that he can never escape.
Yeah.
The Sutaputra, it dictates how society views him. It limits the opportunities that are available to him. And ultimately, I think it fuels much of the injustice that he has to endure. So, despite his obvious talent and, as we said, his divine origins, this social designation becomes an unyielding barrier.
Right.
And so you'll see as we go through the story how this denial of his, what was considered his rightful place, really shapes his desires and shapes his interactions with the world.
Yeah, and so he harbors this intense desire to
Right.
become a warrior. Um, and, because of his perceived low birth, he's denied the instruction that he seeks.
Yeah, imagine the frustration.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, can you, you have this inherent ability, right? You have this drive, to excel in warfare, and yet you're constantly being told, no, you are not worthy because of who your parents are.
Exactly. And I think that would create a lot of resentment, towards those who are, born into privilege.
Right.
And it points, I think, to a fundamental flaw in the societal structure of the time,
Yeah.
where, potential was often disregarded in favor of birthright.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Karna doesn't accept this limitation. He takes matters into his own hands and he goes to this legendary warrior sage Parashurama.
Right.
And Parashurama was known for accepting only Brahmin disciples. So Karna makes a choice.
Right.
He decides to deceive Parashurama.
He lies.
He lies. He claims to be a Brahmin.
Yeah, and this is a big risk for Karna.
Huge.
And it shows, I think, his immense determination, and perhaps also this willingness to circumvent societal rules in pursuit of his goals.
Yeah.
And so under this assumed identity, he becomes a student of Parashurama. And remarkably, he masters archery, he masters celestial weapons, the entire spectrum of warfare.
Yeah.
He truly becomes an exceptional warrior under the tutelage of one of the greatest.
Yeah, so it seems like he's finally, found his path. But there's this pivotal moment, this incident involving a scorpion. Parashurama is resting. He's using Karna's lap as a pillow, and a scorpion stings Karna.
Right.
And I think most people, if they were stung by a scorpion, they would react instinctively.
Right.
That you try to alleviate the pain. But Karna, he endures this excruciating pain without moving a muscle solely to avoid disturbing his guru's rest.
Right. And this is a testament, I think, to his discipline.
Yeah.
And his respect for Parashurama.
Yeah.
And, it's really a remarkable feat of endurance.
It is. And so it's this very act of endurance that leads to the unraveling of his deception. Because when Parashurama awakens and he witnesses, the extent of Karna's suffering, he becomes suspicious.
Yeah.
Right? And he realizes that this unwavering tolerance for pain is more characteristic of a kshatriya.
Right.
Someone who's trained to endure hardship rather than a Brahmin.
Yeah. It's fascinating how this seemingly small event reveals a much larger truth.
Yeah.
And so Parashurama, through this incident, recognizes the truth of Karna's identity. And upon discovering the lie, his reaction is swift and severe.
Yeah.
He curses Karna, and he says, when you need your knowledge the most, it will fail you.
Which is like the most devastating.
Right.
Right. I'm talking about tragic irony. The very knowledge that he fought so hard to acquire is now destined to betray him at the most critical moment.
Exactly. And it really kind of predetermines a key aspect of his downfall. It highlights the power of these curses or pronouncements in these ancient narratives.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have this curse hanging over him, and yet another dimension of Karna's character starts to shine through, and that is his renowned generosity.
Right.
He was known as Danvir, the greatest giver.
The greatest giver. Yeah, and there are numerous accounts that illustrate this aspect of his nature.
Yeah.
And so you have this very interesting contrast between this curse and this inherent goodness, this willingness to give.
It's like they're existing side by side.
Right.
Right. So this really interesting dichotomy in his character. So let's talk about the incident with Indra. Indra, who is Arjuna's father, learns about Karna, and he learns about this Kavash and Kundal.
Right.
And he realizes, well, this is going to make it very difficult for Arjuna to defeat Karna in battle if and when that time comes.
Exactly. And so Indra hatches a plan. He decides to go disguised as a Brahmin and approach Karna and ask for these divine gifts.
Yeah, and Karna, it is said that he knew that this Brahmin was actually Indra in disguise.
But he recognized him.
And yet, despite recognizing that and knowing that Indra had an ulterior motive, he didn't hesitate.
Yeah.
And Indra asked for the Kavash and Kundal, the very things that protected Karna from harm.
Yeah. And without a second thought, Karna gives them away.
I know. It's like, what?
And that's incredible.
It's crazy.
And he literally removes his armor.
Yeah.
Removes his earrings and offers them to Indra, knowing full well that this act would make him vulnerable in battle.
Yeah.
And so I think it really speaks to Karna's deep-seated commitment to his word, and to this principle of never refusing a genuine request, especially from a Brahmin. And so he prioritizes Dharma, his sense of duty as a giver, even above his own safety and well-being.
Right.
And I think this is a core element of his character.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just this one grand act. There are other stories, the tale of the golden tooth.
Yeah.
Right.
He was born with a golden tooth.
Yeah.
And a beggar approaches him asking for alms.
Yeah.
And Karna breaks off his golden tooth and gives it to him.
It's just like over and over again, right?
Uh-huh,
It's like
uh-huh.
he has this inherent generosity. It's part of who he
It
is.
really is.
So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about his loyalty to Duryodhana.
Right.
Even though Duryodhana wasn't exactly known for his virtuous nature,
Right.
Karna remained steadfastly by his side.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think cemented this deep bond of loyalty?
Well, I think, early in Karna's life, um, Duryodhana was the only one who truly recognized his worth and treated him as an equal.
Right.
He completely disregarded his perceived low birth.
Yeah.
And in fact, he bestowed upon Karna the kingdom of Anga.
Right.
And so he granted him status and recognition that society had unjustly denied him.
Right.
And so this pivotal act of acknowledging Karna's capabilities, and offering him respect, created this unshakable bond of loyalty in Karna.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, Duryodhana is often portrayed as the villain
Right.
in this epic.
Right.
But for Karna, he's his best friend. He's his,
Yeah.
the person who believed in him.
Yeah.
So when Krishna himself approaches Karna before the war, reveals his true identity as Kunti's eldest son, and offers him the throne of Hastinapura, what was Karna's reaction?
Right.
I mean, it's like the ultimate power play,
Just imagine that.
Krishna's like, yo, I'm going to tell you who you really are. You're actually a prince. You could rule this whole kingdom.
Yeah. And he lays bare the complete truth,
Yeah.
his lineage. And he offers him this incredible opportunity to reunite with his brothers, the Pandavas.
Yeah.
And to rule Hastinapura. And so this is a proposition that could have fundamentally altered the course of the war.
Of course.
And his entire life.
Absolutely. And what does he do? He says no.
He rejects it.
Yeah.
And chooses to remain loyal to Duryodhana,
To the man who had stood by him.
the man who'd given him a chance.
Yeah.
And so from a purely strategic perspective, this might seem like a perplexing decision.
Yeah.
But I think it speaks volumes about Karna's commitment to his word.
Yeah.
His deep sense of gratitude and his unwavering loyalty.
Totally. But as we've seen, fate, has a very interesting design for Karna.
Yeah, fate seems to have a cruel design for him.
Another twist comes in the form of a curse from a Brahmin.
That's right. And this incident further contributes to his tragic destiny.
Yeah.
So he accidentally kills a Brahmin's cow with his chariot.
Oh, wow.
And the Brahmin is overcome with grief and anger.
Yeah.
And he curses Karna. And he says that in your most critical moment in battle, the earth itself will betray you.
Which is so specific.
I know.
And chilling.
Right. It's chilling. And so this is just another layer of predetermined misfortune that's added to Karna's life.
Right. And so, of course, this curse manifests in his final battle with Arjuna.
Right.
Right? His chariot wheel gets stuck in the mud.
Stuck in the earth.
In the earth.
Yeah.
He's literally grounded.
Literally.
At the most crucial point of this conflict.
Yeah.
What does that signify for you?
Well, I think it really underscores this overwhelming power of fate.
Yeah.
As it was believed then,
Yeah.
that despite Karna's strength and skill,
Yeah.
he is ultimately undone by these pronouncements,
Right.
by these curses, by these words that were spoken over him.
Yeah. And so it's in this moment that Krishna urges Arjuna to strike him down.
Right.
Right. Karna is unarmed. His chariot is stuck. This moment is so debated.
It's a very controversial moment.
In the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the ethical implications of attacking someone under those circumstances?
Well, I think it raises a lot of questions about, the principles of warfare and what constitutes righteousness in battle.
Right.
And Karna himself pleads for fairness.
Yeah.
He reminds them of these established codes of conduct that were supposed to govern these engagements. But Krishna, ever a strategist.
Yeah.
And the interpreter of Dharma offers his justification.
Right.
And he recounts, the many instances of injustice that Karna had either participated in or supported.
Right.
Throughout the war. Including his unwavering allegiance to Duryodhana.
Yeah.
And his involvement in the humiliation of Draupadi.
Yeah.
And so he's basically saying, you've forfeited your right to be treated fairly at this juncture.
Because of your past actions.
Because of your past actions.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And so Arjuna, following Krishna's guidance, releases the fatal arrow. and ends Karna's life,
Right.
which is, you know,
It's a
tremendous.
tragic end
Right.
for this amazing
Yeah.
warrior.
But even in death, Karna's greatness doesn't vanish.
Yeah.
There's this amazing account of what happens when Krishna attempts to cremate his body.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So initially, the fire wouldn't consume his mortal remains.
Interesting.
Um, and Krishna reveals that this is because of Karna's immense and consistent generosity throughout his life.
Okay.
That his physical body was no longer entirely his own,
Ow.
because he had given away so much of himself through his countless acts of charity.
It's almost like he gave away pieces of himself.
Exactly.
Right
That's a
back
good
up.
way to put it. And so there's nothing left to burn. It's like this really amazing concept.
Yeah.
So what does Krishna do? He devises this one final test.
Right. He disguises himself,
Yeah.
once again this time as an elderly, impoverished man,
Okay.
and he approaches the lifeless Karna and asks for charity one last time.
And this really kind of solidifies Karna's legendary status as a giver, because even in death, even in this liminal space between worlds, he still manages to give.
Yeah.
And he donates all of his remaining merit,
Wow.
all of the accumulated virtue from his life. And so it's this astonishing final act of generosity that really kind of transcends even the boundaries of life and death.
It's like giving even when you have nothing left to give,
Exactly.
which
Yeah.
is amazing. So as we reflect on Karna's life, as a whole, what are the most profound lessons that resonate? What should listeners take away from this?
Well, I think Karna's life offers a lot of powerful insights into the complexities of loyalty.
Yeah.
The remarkable resilience of the human spirit when faced with relentless adversity.
Yeah.
And the often harsh realities of destiny and societal prejudice.
Yeah, and despite all of that,
Yeah.
all the injustice, all the barriers, he never surrendered his dignity.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a nobility
There is.
in how he carries himself,
Yeah.
even in the face of defeat. And so that's why he's such a revered and also tragic figure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He embodies these ideals of a warrior
Yeah.
and this unparalleled giver.
Hmm.
And his story continues to resonate, I think, because it touches upon these universal human experiences
Yeah.
of belonging, the yearning for recognition, and the painful consequences of societal biases.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the amazing life of Karna, let's leave you with this. Reflect on the demands of loyalty versus righteousness.
Right.
Did Karna's unwavering commitment to Duryodhana ultimately lead him down a path of moral compromise? And also consider the impact of societal prejudice,
Yeah.
even those embedded in ancient structures, and how that can unjustly shape someone's fate?
Yeah.
How does Karna's story resonate with the struggles for recognition and fairness that we see today?
Right.
I think there's a lot to unpack there. So thank you for joining us on the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
See ya.